may be persuaded to sell it. Maybe. You should find her at the windmill camp at the Trinity in Old Villador.
Video games and side questing are as inseparable as video games and a health bar to me. The act of implementing a side quest can serve several purposes all at once, such as dictating player progression, providing specific rewards, and many times they include their own self-contained little stories. But the act of questing in general is often a pretty mixed bag, I feel. Games have always had side quests pretty much since the advent of the RPG. And don't get me wrong, whenever a side quest is handled absolutely perfectly, they can make for extremely standout moments in that game. They could, maybe, even be your favorite part of the game. But I think we can all agree that we've come across some pretty meh side quests. Maybe they were quests that didn't need to be there. They didn't have to be implemented in the game and they just sort of feel like busy work. And ones that are so indefensible that actually they're just outright bad. I want to take time today and discuss what makes a side quest. But in this video, I want to do a little bit of a change up. While normally I would break down a side quest and figure out what makes it good and what makes it bad, and use that as a guideline to sort of make the best possible side quest, I have decided that today is opposite day, and actually, I want to make a list and start nailing down some bullet points to make the worst possible quest that we can make. What's the point of doing all this? Well, I don't know, like I said, I just wanted to do a little bit of a change up to the typical video formula. We're going to be talking about the good and the bad as always, and if you want to maybe use this video as a guideline or a rubric to make a good side quest, then just do the opposite of what I say. I want to keep things sort of succinct in this video, and because of this, we're only going to have about 3 bullet points that we're really going to break down. Said bullet points are going to cover the more iffy aspects of side quests, the stuff that really makes them less than impactful. If I missed any talking points that you felt were obvious, then hey, go ahead and leave a comment or join the Discord. If there's enough extra talking points, then who knows, maybe I make a follow-up video to this one. With all that being said though, let's go ahead and jump into our first bullet point. I think a fair enough place to start would be what happens whenever we actually start playing the quest. All too often, players accept quests in a video game and their eyes sort of glaze over. You might be reading a text box, but you're probably not actually reading it. You're just kind of parsing information and mashing the A button or X button as fast as you can just to accept it and get it over with. In my mind, it would be a wise idea for the quest to have a strong hook. Something that immediately pulls you in and has you sort of endeared to the quest itself. Most RPGs, for instance, have an awful lot of reading that you do, and that can get pretty taxing on some people. I'm not going to suggest that every game needs voice acting or something because, let's be honest, that's kind of an insurmountable issue for some devs. But I'm also not going to say that every quest needs to be this dramatic, high-stakes sort of thing that you have to deal with. If you're saving orphans from a burning building for the 700th time, it's going to lose its effect pretty quickly. So instead, go for these varied stories where you're doing all kinds of stuff, and have it manifest in gameplay to some extent as well. As a pretty simple example, why not make it to where whenever you're collecting something for a quest, say you need circuit boards from a robot or something, have an animation where you're prying the robot open and taking the circuit board out, and have it only appear in that quest. It doesn't have to be this big crazy thing that you do all throughout the game, it can have this one little moment all to itself. And this tiny aspect will help the quest stand out in your mind. Even still, this is not the only thing we can do to make quests interesting. Often when you find yourself questing in video games, there's an awful lot of generic animations that play with your character just nodding or waving their hands and mouthing off something. Sort of to make it feel like that they're talking, but no words are actually coming out. This is fine, I guess, and it's definitely a band-aid fix to make sure that there's a little something going on while you accept the quest. But why not just, try a little harder, you know what I mean? Have some shot composition with the character faces and camera angles. Focus on specific parts of the environment to really hammer home what you're fighting for or what you're collecting. And even just beyond this, have it to where the quest giver themselves is sort of characterized by their quest. Plenty of games do this already. Maybe you're talking to an old war veteran and he seems really standoffish or antagonistic to you, but you opt to do his quest anyway, and oh, the reason you're fighting these enemies or something is because the veteran is simply too old to be fighting anymore and he wants to protect his family. Oh, well now, suddenly all of his behaviors are a little bit more excusable. He's just defensive, and all of a sudden that character has some personality associated with them. And it's personalization that makes sense with the context of the quest itself. Doing any or all or none of these things that I'm not mentioning really can make a quest more interesting. At least in my personal belief. And hey, cool, we figured out how to make quests more interesting in that way. But even still, not every quest is going to be a standout moment. There's gonna be some forgettable ones. Can we do anything about the quests that are sort of generic and can't be fixed? Well, I'd like to think so. And with that, let's talk about our next talking point. As I said before, not every quest is going to be this super interesting odyssey where you go across the entire planet or plains or environment or whatever. And really, they don't need to be. That would definitely wear itself too thin too quickly. It is my belief that a dev is making the game in service of the players. They kind of have to because players are also the customers, right? And in this way, the player's time needs to be respected. And I know this all sounds really obvious, but even still, why do some quests make it to where I have to slay 20 goblins? I can't assume that every NPC just has this vendetta for a set amount of enemies in an environment. And realistically, they don't, it's just a gameplay thing. If you're fighting a set number of enemies, it's probably to get you used to the controls or new abilities that your character has access to. And this can work from a gameplay perspective, but even still, we don't need to see it constantly. What I'm really trying to get at here is that if a quest can't be made interesting at all, then the very least that it can do is be inoffensive. If I'm doing a generic hunting quest for supplies or enemies, then please make it to where those items or enemies are on the way to my quest objective for the main story. Oh well, wouldn't that take away from the exploration aspect of a game? Sure, it would, but then why not just come about it in a different way? Have it to where a more important feeling quest facilitates that exploration. For me, if a quest is indefensibly generic, then it should also not force me to go out of my way to complete that quest. What's more, if a quest is forcing me to go out of my way to complete it, then all I'm gonna say is that it better be worth it. I really do feel like that comes with the territory. And if you think about it, there's a whole bunch of ways to make a quest worth completing, even if it does seem annoying at first glance. Think about the dreaded fetch quest. Maybe you have a string of side quests where you're collecting items and trading them to certain people. Then they give you an item that needs to be given to another person across the continent. This, on its face, doesn't need to be bad. You can use the length of this quest to set up pacing for the quest's story. If you're going about it like this, then you can cash in on the length of the story and have it to where the climax of said quest becomes sort of a neat cherry on top, basically. And of course, you can do this with rewards as well, but I feel like the story of the quest itself also needs to be impactful in its own right. Because in my mind, if something in a game is simply a checklist of things to do, then it's inherently going to be pretty uninteresting. It becomes chores, basically. And unless you're really into the idea of getting things checked off, then you probably don't like chores that much. I don't think most people do. And you know what? Let's throw a little bonus idea out there as well. Why not show some restraint when implementing a quest? By which I mean, why not just not have a quest be there? If there's absolutely no way to make a quest interesting or beneficial even to the player, then just don't add one. It doesn't feel like busy work if that work isn't there. Maybe as a dev you can implement quests separately from something like a notice board. Have it to where these items or enemies or optional areas still contribute something, but you don't feel like you have to do them, it's just extra incentive. I understand that's sort of the point of a side quest anyway, but if you continue to add on to systems, you can make it to where each one of your actions or rewards or anything that you do is sort of multifaceted. Every video game has a shop, right? And you can sell things to that shop. Extra quest materials and stuff, and things you just don't need. And stuff like that has been implemented already. If you're going out and hunting 20 goblins, and you end up getting 25 goblin hides, you can sell the rest of the goblin hides. All pretty obvious stuff, but do more with that idea. Maybe you can do a thing where the shopkeeper has a bounty board where they want more goblin hides, and it's an infinite repeatable quest. This can be instead on said notice board that we're theorizing, instead of it being a side quest. Regardless of what you want to call this theoretical mechanic, a notice board, a bounty board, or whatever, you can do a whole bunch of ideas with this too. You can personalize the board with different bounties or different requests that people have. Use a character's mannerisms and give the NPCs names that make you go, oh yeah, I know this person. I know what they're looking for, and stuff like that. And of course, reward the player accordingly for what effort they put in. And while we're bringing up the prospect of rewards, let's go ahead and flow into our last bullet point. Personally, I find no better way to end off this video than what you get at the end of a side quest. It's arguably the reason you pick up the side quest in the first place, and of course, I'm talking about the rewards themselves. Just to establish something right off the bat here, the end result of a side quest should be important. Whether it be through the resolution of the side quest story, or with the rewards that you get at the end. And in the best case scenario, probably both. But is there a way to make the rewards themselves benefit the wider quest? Well, I'd like to think so. For instance, think about whenever you first start a game, right? Say in the game's story, you start as a soldier for some sort of wider military force. Your first quest by your commander might be to go do this generic set of things, collect something, retrieve something, fight something, blah blah blah. But the rewards that you get might be your first starting set of cadet armor and weapons, or private armor or weapons, stuff like that. This is pretty by the book so far, but maybe the rewards themselves are special in some way. Maybe the stats of the armor aren't particularly amazing because it's starting armor, but when all the pieces of the set are brought together, maybe it gives you some sort of set bonus. And said set bonus might be so important to your build that you don't really want to get rid of it. Suddenly, that armor is way more important to you. And it was just starting quest armor. If you didn't want to go this route, maybe throughout the game's story, you're a turncoat now. You no longer work for the military, but you still have their armor. Maybe there's a follow-up side quest where you need to equip your old armor and use it as a disguise. What you could then do is have it to where at the end of the quest, your commanding officer, the old one that you betrayed, is now the boss of that quest. And whenever you defeat him, you get his armor. And the set bonus and stuff might be the same as your old starting armor, but now the stats are better. Now it's endgame equivalent. It might be a little sad to say, but truthfully I am pretty proud of that proposition I just made. And if you didn't like it, then I don't know, you could really honestly come up with a whole bunch of other ways you could make rewards more interesting. Maybe you're accepting a side quest on behalf of your party member. Maybe you're doing a quest for the rogue of the group, who is on some sort of revenge quest, and it's the reason they joined you in the first place. Now it's finally time to wrap their story together. You go on the revenge quest, you go with them, you do stuff for them. Then whenever it comes to the final enemy, they have a change of heart. They don't follow through with the revenge quest. They end up sparing their main enemy. Suddenly, character growth. You could do a thing where the target of the rogue suddenly cowers in fear, and says, "No, forgive me, here, take my dagger," and that's a symbol of the rogue being a better person now, no longer seeking revenge. Maybe your character and the rogue decides to accept that as a symbol of their friendship and their character growth. And now, suddenly, it's a new unique weapon that only the rogue and maybe your character can use. And of course, these are both pretty grandiose examples, but you can make it much simpler if you want to. Maybe you're accepting a quest from the mother of a fallen adventurer or something. "Oh, can you please go and retrieve my son's armor and weapons?" And it's like, "Oh, well, thank you for retrieving those for me. Here, you can have them because I know he would want you to have them." In my mind, simple, heartfelt, and effective. And with all of these things coupled together, quest rewards, what you do in the quest, how long the quest takes, and respecting the player's patience and time, maybe, just maybe, we came about a way to make quests more interesting in general. In the very beginning of this video, I said that quests are very much a mixed bag. And in all honesty, I do still believe that. But they're a system that's so old, that's so tried and tested, that devs have, in fact, been iterating upon the idea of a side quest. How to make them impactful, how to make them feel important, and how to make the player feel good for completing them. Trust me whenever I say that I'm aware many of the examples and things I talked about aren't exactly new whenever it comes to improving the idea of a side quest. Improving the gameplay with better story, meaningful rewards, and all that other good stuff. Really, the reason I even brought those things back up was because, to me, I feel like they're so easily forgotten when trying to make a side quest. Quests can facilitate many things. They can add to world building, they can be their own stories, and they might just be your favorite parts of the game, as I said before. So, in this way, with everything I've been talking about being taken into account, the final thing that I'll add is that quests should be given proper respect. Even if one cannot make a side quest particularly impactful or special feeling, then it should at least be fun to do. And if not even that, then let them contribute in other ways. Now that we're at the end of the video, I guess it's time to wrap up. If you enjoyed what I had here to say today, then go ahead and like and subscribe. I know a whole bunch of you are tired of this next part, so I'll keep it brief. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers before the end of the year. We're really close, we don't have that long to go now. And if you want to join a growing community of people who just like talking about video games, then hey, I guess it's right here. If you feel like I left anything out of this video that you really wanted me to talk about or want discussed, then you can start your own discussion in the comments or in the Discord. The Discord's free to join, and you can talk to whoever's in there, including me or other viewers. But that being said, if you donate $1 a month to the Patreon, you get exclusive access to sneak peeks that I make for future videos, as well as allowing me to shout out your name at the end of those videos. If you don't feel like doing literally any of that, then hey, I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good day. And as always, thank you for watching.